You're always aware of how people see you, and it affects everything you do.
That's it exactly. And, for Claire, that double consciousness is, well, it's even more intense. She's living in this white world, but she can't ever fully escape her blackness. It's this constant source of anxiety and fear for her.
It's like she's trying to outrun her own shadow, but it's always right there.
Yeah, and that psychological tension, it drives the whole...
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Welcome back to Witter, your shortcut to those deep dives for your busy minds.
That's right. We're really getting into it. We like to take these complex topics.
You do, and especially since it's Black History Month, we're really trying to shine a light on all these amazing Black voices in literature.
Absolutely. Voices that really, honestly, should be heard year-round.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So this week we are unpacking Nella Larsen's passing. This novel just takes us straight into the heart of the Harlem Renaissance.
A story published in 1929, and it's amazing how much it still resonates today. I mean, it grapples with identity, with race, with belonging, in a society that's still deeply divided today.
Right. And it's so interesting how Larsen just kind of throws us right into this world, right? I mean, they're the Roaring '20s, this time of immense social change. But at the same time, all this deep racial tension. So we're talking, bustling Chicago and Harlem, jazz music is in the air. But there's this constant undercurrent of danger for Black Americans.
Yeah, and that's where this whole idea of passing comes in. It wasn't just about fitting in. It was about survival, opportunity, a way to escape, the very real threat of racism and violence.
Oh, absolutely. It was a matter of life or death for some people. And Larsen introduces us to Irene Redfield, a woman who's living a pretty comfortable life in Harlem, surrounded by other successful Black people.
She values her security, stability, very much about keeping up appearances. But then her whole world is just shaken when she runs into Clare Kendry. Now, Claire is a childhood friend who's made this... Well, it's kind of a drastic choice. She's chosen to live as a white woman.
I mean, can you imagine that? You bump into someone from your past, and they built this whole new life based on denying their racial identity. And Claire's not, just dipping her toes into the white world. She's fully immersed.
She's gone all in. I mean, she's even married to a white man who is, well, how can I put this? He's vehemently racist, and he has no clue, absolutely no idea about his wife's secret.
It's almost like Larsen is playing with this idea of irony, right? This constant tension between appearance and reality.
Exactly. And Claire, the way Larsen portrays her, is beautiful, charming, a real risk taker. But, underneath this really carefully crafted facade, there's this deep unhappiness. It's like she's yearning for the Black heritage that she's had to suppress.
It really makes you think about the psychological toll of living this double life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the constant fear of exposure. And then the guilt, right? The guilt of leaving your community behind. I mean, was it truly a better life?
That's the genius of Larsen's writing. She doesn't give you these easy answers. She makes you confront this complexity of passing. I mean, is it betrayal? Is it self-preservation? Does it lead to happiness? Or does it ultimately end in tragedy?
And these are questions that still resonate today. Not just for Black Americans, but, for anyone who's felt that pressure to conform, to hide a part of themselves just to fit in.
Exactly. And that's why Passing is such a powerful work. It's timeless. It's a story about race, for sure. But it's also a story about identity, about the masks we all wear, and the consequences of denying who we truly are.
It's like Irene and Clare. They're two sides of the same coin. Irene embraces her Black identity while Claire's trying to erase hers. And yet they're both drawn to each other. They're fascinated and repelled by each other's choices.
Almost like they're looking in a mirror, right? They see a reflection of themselves in the other person, this glimpse of, well, maybe a different path they could have taken. And through this complex relationship, Larsen explores, she explores everything. The psychological, the emotional toll of navigating a world that just tries to shove people into these rigid categories.
Yeah, you can just feel that tension, that inner turmoil, as they're trying to figure out where they belong in a society that just doesn't doesn't seem to have a place for them.
And Larsen used the symbolism so masterfully to get these ideas across, like that unopened letter. That represents just how dangerous it can be to reveal hidden truths.
I mean, even the act of passing itself becomes symbolic. I mean, don't we all wear masks sometimes, keep secrets? And what's the cost of living inauthentically? That's what Larsen really pushes us to think about.
And then there's the ending. So ambiguous, so tragic. Just leave you with more questions than answers.
Yeah, it definitely stayed with me long after I finished the book.
That ambiguity, I think it's on purpose. It speaks to the consequences, right? Societal pressures, this lingering impact on identity, even after the passing has happened. Can you ever truly escape your past, even if you try to erase it?
A question that has haunted Black Americans for generations.
Exactly. And, passing isn't just a story. It's a reflection of a lived experience, a reality that so many Black people have faced throughout history and they continue to face today.
And it just challenges us, right?
Yeah.
How much do we compromise to fit in? And what happens when we deny who we really are?
It goes even deeper than outward appearances, though. Passing dives into this whole idea of internalized racism, like how even within the Black community, you have these shades of colorism and prejudice.
Like there's this hidden hierarchy, right? This pressure to conform to these certain standards of beauty and respectability, even within your own group.
Yeah, exactly. And Larsen shows us that with Irene. Even though she's chosen to live within the Black community, she's still dealing with all these issues. I mean, she knows that her lighter skin gives her certain privileges, and she's struggling with the guilt and the shame that comes with that.
It reminds me of W.E.B. Du Bois' idea of double consciousness, this feeling of always looking at yourself through the eyes of a society that just, it devalues your identity. You're always aware of how people see you, and it affects everything you do.
That's it, exactly. And, for Clare, that double consciousness is, it's even more intense. She's living in this white world, but she can't ever fully escape her Blackness. It's this constant source of anxiety and fear for her.
It's like she's trying to outrun her own shadow, but it's always right there.
Yeah, and that psychological tension, it drives the whole story. We see how Claire's desperation for connection, for belonging, it leads her back to Irene and the Black community she left behind.
But it's not a simple homecoming. There's this sense of distrust. Like, people feel Claire's playing a dangerous game, risking not just her own safety, but everyone around her too.
And that's the tragedy of it all. Passing makes us face these impossible choices that, Black people were forced to make in a society built on white supremacy. And no matter how good the intentions are, those choices can have devastating consequences.
It reminds us that even during times of progress, like the Harlem Renaissance, the threat of racism was still there. And it wasn't just from outside the community, it was internalized, woven into the fabric of society, even within the Black community.
That's what makes Larsen's work so powerful. She doesn't shy away from these tough topics, race, class, gender. She makes you face these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we live in.
It's a story that's very specific to its time, but the themes are universal. It's about that human need for acceptance, for belonging, and how far we'll go to get it.
And it asks this really important question. What does it really mean to pass? Is it denying who you are? Or is it just navigating a world that refuses to see you for who you really are?
And that question is still relevant today, right? I mean, we're still struggling with these issues of race, identity, and belonging in a society that, let's face it, is still trying to overcome its history of prejudice and discrimination.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to read books like Passing. They challenge us to think critically, to empathize with experiences that might be different from our own, and to work towards creating a more just and equitable world.
It's a reminder that literature, it has this power to spark conversations, to challenge our viewpoints, and to inspire us to build a better future.
And that's something we should all be striving for, not just during Black History Month, but all year round.
I agree completely. So if you're looking for something powerful and thought-provoking, I really recommend picking up a copy of Passing. And while you're at it, why not explore the work of other Black authors?
Oh, there are so many incredible voices out there just waiting to be discovered. Voices that offer these unique perspectives. They challenge our thinking. They enrich our understanding of the world.
So let's use this opportunity, right? Let's broaden our horizons. Let's learn from different experiences. And let's amplify the voices that have been, they've been marginalized for far too long.
I couldn't agree more. It's time to step outside our comfort zones and engage with literature that pushes us, that makes us think differently, that helps us see the world in new ways.
And that brings us to a question for you, our listeners. What are some Black authors you've discovered that have moved you, challenged you, or maybe just blown you away completely?
We would love to hear your recommendations and keep this conversation going, about the power of Black voices in literature.
Let's make this a collective effort to celebrate, to amplify, to support Black authors, not just during Black History Month, but every single day.
Because these stories, they matter. They can change hearts and minds. And ultimately, they can change the world we live in.
So let's keep reading and let's keep talking about these important issues.
Until next time, happy reading.
It's really incredible how passing it manages to weave together all these complex themes, identity, race, and belonging, all set against the backdrop of the Harlem Renaissance.
Right, and that's what makes it so just multi-layered and rich, On the surface, you've got this story about these two women navigating a society that's, so focused on race. But then underneath, you've got this deep exploration of the human psyche. What are the internal struggles that come with trying to define who you are when the world is constantly trying to define you?
And the Harlem Renaissance itself, it's not just a setting. It plays such a crucial role. It had this explosion of Black art and music and literature, this real celebration of Black identity. But at the same time, you can't escape the reality of racism and segregation.
It's almost like, Larsen is holding up a mirror. She's showing us the contradictions of that time, exposing the hypocrisy,
Yeah.
A society that says it values progress, but it's still clinging to this racist past.
Yeah, and that tension, you can feel it everywhere in the novel. It's
Yeah.
in the choices the characters make, their anxieties, just this constant awareness that their existence is, it's precarious. And that tension, I think, is something we still feel today.
Oh, absolutely. The themes that Larsen explores, they're timeless, universal even. It's about that human need to be accepted, to belong, and how we struggle to figure out who we are when society has all these expectations, and what happens when you deny who you truly are.
And that's why it's so important to keep having these conversations, to engage with literature that makes us think differently, makes us face these uncomfortable truths.
Reading books like Passing, it's an act of empathy. It's stepping outside of our own experiences, connecting with the lives and struggles of other people. It's like this reminder that, we're all part of this bigger story, and the social and historical forces around us, they shape our individual experiences.
And it's not just about, understanding history. It's about using that understanding to shape who we are now and who we want to be in the future.
Exactly. When we grapple with these issues of race, identity, belonging, then we can start to dismantle the systems that keep us divided. And we can work towards a society that's truly just and equitable for everybody.
So if you're feeling inspired and you want to explore more Black literature, we really recommend checking out some of the authors we talked about.
Oh yeah, people like James Weldon Johnson, Zora Neale Hurston, and so many others, they've added so much to the literary world, with their unique perspectives and voices.
These are voices that we need to hear, stories that need to be told. And when we lift up these voices, we create a richer, more inclusive cultural landscape.
So let's keep supporting Black authors, let's read their work, talk about these important issues, and let's use our own voices to speak up for a more just and equitable world.
That's what Witter is all about, right? Diving deep into these complex topics, understanding the world better, and then using that knowledge to make a real difference.
And on that note, until next time, keep those minds engaged and those pages turning.